All right. Ready to dig into Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, but we're not doing the typical book report thing here.
Nope.
This is more like, a treasure hunt for those real gems, those bits of wisdom that you can actually
Yeah,
use.
those aha moments.
Right.
Practical stuff, not just like dry summaries.
Exactly. And it's interesting, 7 Habits still gets talked about so much, even after all these years since it came out.
It's true. It's amazing, actually. You've got like business legends praising it, Warren Bennis, Ken Blanchard. Those they don't just like throw praise around,
Right.
They saw that these principles, they actually work in the real world.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical self-help flash in the pan. And the range of people who love this book, it's incredible. CEOs to astronauts even heard an opera singer as a fan.
Wow.
Yeah. Seems like there's something in here for everyone, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So let's dig into why this book's had such a lasting impact.
Okay.
One of the big things Covey talks about is paradigms. I've always thought of them kind of like mental maps we have in our heads, you know what I mean?
Exactly. It's like that optical illusion, the one that looks like a young woman to some people, and then other people, they see an old lady.
Right, right. I've seen that one.
Same image, completely different ways of seeing it. It all depends on your perception.
So it's not about changing what we're looking at, it's changing how we see it.
You got it. And that's Covey's big point.
Mm-hmm.
These paradigms, these mental maps, they're shaping our whole reality, really. It's not just what we see, but our attitude, how we react to things, even our relationships. It's like he's pushing us to question everything. Like just because we see things a certain way doesn't mean it's the only way or even the right way.
Interesting. So that kind of leads into this whole character ethic versus personality ethic thing, right?
Right.
Which is a pretty central idea in the book.
Definitely. And it's something people often miss. Like
Mhm.
for a long time, success was all about character. I think Benjamin Franklin, integrity, humility, those were the foundations.
Right.
But then somewhere along the way, we
Yeah.
shifted to this personality ethic. So it became more about appearances, quick fixes, being charming.
Yeah.
Social media is like the ultimate example of that.
It's true. It's like we're so busy crafting this image of success, we kind of forget about the substance underneath it all.
Exactly.
It's like you can have the fanciest website in the world, but if you're selling a terrible product, no one's going to stick around.
Right, exactly. And that's where people get tripped up. They get so fixated on like the techniques, the shortcuts, they forget about building a solid core. Covey's saying, hey, what's the foundation of your success? Is it something that will actually last? Or is it all just, smoke and mirrors?
It's like that saying, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool everyone all the time.
Exactly.
Okay, so then, where do we even begin? How do we ditch that quick fix mindset and actually start building that inner strength?
That's where this idea comes in. Being is seeing, like what we see out in the world. It's a reflection of what's going on inside us, our own character. Let me give you an example. Covey talks about being on the subway in New York,
Mhm.
and there's this guy, his kids are just running wild, being totally out of control.
Oh, I've totally been there. Silent judgment is my superpower on public transportation, especially when there's kids involved.
Right. But here's the thing. Covey, he finds out later that this guy's wife, she had just died recently.
Wow.
So suddenly, it's not just some guy who can't control his kids, it's a grieving husband, just trying to cope. And that one little shift in perception, it completely changed Covey's attitude, his behavior, everything.
Wow. That's actually really powerful.
It is.
It's a good reminder that we usually don't know the full story about what's going on with people. It's easy to jump to judgments, but then what does that say about us? Okay, so our perception is a reflection of our own character. That makes sense. But how do you actually shift those really deep-seated paradigms, those ways of seeing? How do we start to see the world differently? So we're talking about shifting those paradigms, really taking a look inward. And this
Yeah.
is where he introduces those 7 habits, right?
Exactly.
But it's not like you can just flip a switch and suddenly you're highly effective.
Definitely not. It's a process, that's for sure. Like Covey compares it to, a child learning how to walk.
Okay.
You wouldn't expect them to just get up one day and run a marathon, right?
Definitely not.
There's crawling, there's stumbling, lots of falling down involved.
Yeah.
And it's the same with us, with personal growth.
Yeah.
It's about embracing those different stages, realizing that real change. That takes time. And consistent effort, you can't rush it.
Right.
And, the first 3 habits, those are all about what Covey calls private victory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that inner work,
Yeah.
mastering ourselves before we can really connect with others.
That makes sense. You can't build a strong house without a solid foundation, right?
Exactly.
So what's that first step toward private victory?
Habit number 1 is be proactive. Basically, it means recognizing that we have the power to choose how we respond to any situation. We're not just like passive victims of our circumstances. We have agency. We have a choice.
Right.
We do.
It's like that circle of influence that Covey talks about, where,
Right.
okay, we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it.
Exactly. That reminds me of that story about the battleship captain who almost crashed into a lighthouse.
Oh,
Yeah, because he thought it was another ship, and he was so focused on his own, narrow view, he almost caused a disaster.
wow. That's a pretty good analogy. So if he had been more proactive, more willing to maybe question his own assumptions, he
Exactly.
could have avoided that whole thing.
Exactly.
So how do we do that? How do we become more like that aware, proactive captain in our own lives?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we always have a choice.
Mhm.
Even when it seems like things are totally spinning out of control,
Right.
we can choose how we're going to react. That's where our power is.
Okay, so we're being proactive, taking responsibility for our choices. What's the next step on this road to private victory?
Habit 2 is all about purpose. It's having that really clear vision for your life.
Okay.
It's begin with the end in mind.
Oh, I like that. It's like that saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Exactly. It's about defining what actually matters to you, your values, your goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your definition of success? Not society's, but yours. And then what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Those are big questions.
They are, but they're important.
But I can see how having those answers, that clarity, would really help you make decisions in your life. Stay focused on what's important, like having a compass or something.
Precisely. Without that sense of direction, it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, let other people's priorities run your life.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're being proactive. We've got our goals set. What's next? How do we actually put all this into action?
That's where habit 3 comes in. But first things first. It's about prioritizing, making sure your actions are lining up with your values, your goals. We were just talking about those.
So this sounds like this is where good time management skills come into play, right?
Absolutely. It's more than just time management, though.
Yeah.
It's really about life management.
Okay.
It's having the courage to say no to things that don't really matter, even when they seem urgent or important to other people.
Oh, okay. So it's about setting boundaries,
Yes,
learning to prioritize. It's so easy to get caught up in the stuff that feels urgent, but it's not actually important.
exactly. And that's where the first 2 habits, they really come into play.
Okay.
Because if you don't already know what your values are, what your goals are,
Yeah,
it's so easy to let other people decide your priorities.
it's true. Okay, so we've covered that private victory, those inner habits that build the foundation. Now we're moving into public victory, those habits that help us build those strong relationships. So where do we begin with that? So it feels like we're finally ready to step out into the world, with all that hard-won inner strength.
Right.
So how do we take those private victories and turn them into wins in our relationships? What's the secret sauce for public victory?
Well, it all starts with kind of a fundamental shift in how we see things. Habit number 4 is think win-win.
Okay.
Covey, he wants us to ditch that whole scarcity mindset. That idea that it's always me versus you fighting over a tiny piece of pie.
Right, yeah.
Instead, he says, why not bake a bigger pie?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's more about collaboration, not competition. It's about finding solutions that work for everybody. But that can be tough, right?
It can.
How do you actually use that win-win thinking when you're in a tough negotiation, for example?
It's about really understanding the other person, their needs. What's motivating them? What are their goals? What are they afraid of?
Okay.
And then you try to figure out how you can find a solution that works for both of you.
Yeah.
It might not always be obvious at first, but you'd be amazed at what kind of creative solutions pop up when you approach things that way, with that collaborative mindset.
Yeah. It's like 2 heads are better than 1.
Exactly.
But then everyone feels good about the outcome too. Okay, so we're thinking win-win. We're trying to make things work for everyone. What's next? How do we make sure everyone feels heard, really understood in those interactions?
That takes us to habit 5, and this is a big one. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Okay.
It's about really listening, really putting yourself in the other person's shoes before you even try to explain your own point of view.
Oh, man. See, that's what I need to work on. I always catch myself jumping ahead. Thinking about what I'm going to say next instead of just actually listening to what the other person's saying.
Yeah, it's a super common trap, and it usually comes from a place of, like, insecurity, you know?
Yeah.
It takes courage to quiet that voice in your head, that inner monologue, and really focus on what the other person's trying to say.
Right.
But when you do that, the rewards are huge. When you truly feel heard, understood, it builds this foundation of trust, connection. You can't get that any other way.
That's true. So we're thinking win-win. We're really listening, building that trust. And this is where, like, the magic of collaboration really kicks in, right?
Okay, and that's where habit 6 comes in, synergize.
Okay.
It's recognizing that, like, together, we can achieve more than we ever could on our own. You bring those diverse perspectives together, everyone feels safe to, like, share their talents, their ideas.
Yeah.
That's when amazing things happen, real breakthroughs.
I can definitely see how that applies to, like, teams at work, but I'm also curious how that shows up in our personal relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you give me an example? Like, what does synergy look like in, say, a marriage?
Sure. Imagine a couple. They're trying to make a big decision. Maybe it's where to live or how to manage their money.
Right.
If they each come to the table with their minds made up, unwilling to budge,
Yeah.
it's going to lead to conflict, resentment. But if they can come to that conversation with empathy, really listen to each other, try to understand the other person's needs, their dreams, and then together they brainstorm solutions.
Yeah.
That's where synergy happens.
So it's about, like, finding that balance where you both feel heard, your needs are being met,
Exactly.
and, like, you're kind of excited about the possibilities when you work together.
Yes, it's like that aha moment when a team just clicks,
Yeah.
or a couple realizes, wow, we created something even better than either of us could have imagined on our own.
Yeah.
That's the power of synergy.
Wow. Okay. We have covered a lot of ground, from, like, mastering ourselves to building strong relationships and then tapping into that power of synergy collaboration. Is there anything else we should keep in mind as we go on this journey of becoming more highly effective?
There's one more habit,
Yeah.
and it's crucial for keeping all the others going strong. Habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Okay.
And it's all about taking care of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. Got to prioritize your own well-being if you want to show up as your best self for yourself and for the people you care about.
So it's not selfish to put that self-care first sometimes.
Not at all. Think of it as an investment in your health, your happiness, your ability to live a more fulfilling, impactful life.
This has been great. Such an insightful deep dive. We talked about paradigms, the difference between character and personality, and those 7 life-changing habits. It's a lot to think about.
It is. But Covey's work, it gives us this timeless roadmap, really, for anyone who wants to live a more meaningful, effective life.
And it's not just about outer success either. It's about cultivating that inner strength, that integrity.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's a journey.
It is a lifelong journey.
Yeah, none of us are ever really finished.
That's right. We're all a work in progress.
We are. Well, on that note, as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. Remember that Covey quote, "Being is seeing." It means our perception of the world. It's a reflection of what's going on inside us. So I would ask you to consider this. What does your view of the world say about you? What would you like it to say? And how can you start making choices, taking actions that align with who you truly want to be?
That's a powerful question. Really powerful. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.